Most barbers have a really hard time with this kind of hair. It's super thin and it moves around a lot. A simple mistake can mess it up completely. I remember the first time I faded him up using the exact same technique that I'm about to show you right now. Homie was speechless. But anyway, let's get right into it. I'm starting off with the number 6 guard with the lever closed, and I'm just setting up my foundation, basically the length all over the top. One thing I am doing here though is I'm going to be avoiding the corners. I'm leaving a little extra length there, so when I bring his lineup down later, I'll have more hair to work with, which will help me to basically keep the lineup more darker, fuller, and allow me to give him a sharper lineup, especially around those corner areas. So you'll see here the way I'm doing this is by kind of just combing the hair that I want to pick up and isolating it or separating it from, the area that I want to avoid. Then starting off with my baseline, my trimmers weren't charged, so I went ahead and used my peanuts to make my foundation, in the shape that I wanted my fade to be. For those of you that are new, you'll see me set my baseline with the trimmer. It's not ideal if you're just starting out, but I would recommend using your clipper instead. I mainly use the trimmers for content purposes so you can see the foundation, more clearly. But after the baseline, I'm going to be using the number 3 guard with the lever closed, to build out that foundational length on the sides and start connecting that shape to the top length. Now, one of the biggest things that helped me make my fades stand out more, to really make them pop, was learning to stay structured with every single guideline. Even right here using the number 3 guard to set up my length, I'm following the exact shape of my baseline. You'll see me do this throughout the entire haircut because it keeps everything consistent and clean. The structure not only helps the fade look balanced, but it also keeps you organized while you're cutting. It really starts with visualizing that shape. Once you set your baseline, every other step just kind of mimics that same pattern. And that's how you build a fade that looks professional and just flows perfectly. Now, I did take the 1.5 guard closed up to where I want that dark part of the fade to begin. This basically sets the starting point for the darker area of the fade. Then to soften it and start blending it into the number 3 area, I just simply open the lever and flick that line up into that. If you've seen my past videos, I talk a lot about using angles. Angling your blade not only helps you improve your freehand control, but also lets you just work more efficiently without having to rely on so many guards. It saves time and gives you more precision, but always start off with low risk. Cut less at first and little by little, take more off until the blend looks right. After flicking out that line with the 1.5 with the lever open, I'm just gonna go in and solidify everything. Basically lock in that top of my fade, what I call the roof or the ceiling. I always tell barbers this, I like to fade down because, just setting that ceiling or safety zone first gives me a clear limit. It helps me see exactly how high not to go, and it just prevents me from accidentally, lighting areas that are meant to stay dark. But put simply, it's just so, I avoid taking the fade too high. Now, once the top dark area or the, top part of my fade is complete and established, I move on to the bottom half of the fade. I start by taking my half guard with the lever closed and going up about 1/2 inch to 1 inch above the baseline. As a reference though, I like to say it's about halfway between the baseline and where I went up with that 1.5 guard. So roughly half that distance. Now this makes blending a lot easier, for me, because once I open the lever on the, the same 0.5 guard, I can blend that section right into the 1.5 area without switching guards. So if it doesn't blend right away though, I'll slowly close the lever bit by bit and I'll play with the angle of my clipper. Always start off, with your clipper angled out a bit more and, with light pressure. Then if needed, add a little more pressure or slightly change your angle more, until it comes together. These tiny adjustments are what really make, a big difference when fading. But after that, I just went in with my thinning shears to detail the whole fade, and cleaning up those little dark spots and fine lines that stand out. Once I finished detailing, I went in with no guard with the lever closed and started fading the baseline into the rest of the fade, using gentle flicks, nothing too aggressive. And as I move up, I am gradually opening the lever to blend everything in smoothly. Now, I do want to say though that detailing is something a lot of barbers overlook, but it's what separates a good fade from a flawless one. People often think barbers who post super clean fades are using filters or enhancements, but in reality, it's just detail work. You're attacking hair by hair, strand by strand, being intentional with every little move. I've had people tell me they thought my haircuts were photoshopped until they saw me fade in person, and then they realize, it's really all just detailing, precision and patience. Now moving on to the C cup, I always like to start with the top reference point and then a bottom reference point, and from there just connecting the two. Don't be afraid to make it curvy, that's the whole point of a clean C cup. Then I just go on to line up his vertical bars, keeping everything natural without pushing the hairline back. And once everything looks sharp, I went ahead and enhanced it slightly, not too crazy, just enough to his liking and to make my presentation better, because presentation is key, guys, especially when it comes to creating content. And don't mind the piece of cardboard, I actually lost my enhancement card. Now moving on to the lineup, this is where you'll see why I left some of that, hair from the top a bit longer to come down towards the bottom. Sometimes it's, necessary to do that to solve your client's problems, not just to make it easier for yourself, but you get the point. I like to start by going in with, with my clipper to remove most of the bulk after I've combed it down and pretty much just create a rough draft, basically setting the foundation of the lineup. Then to really clean it up and make it sharp, I'm just gonna follow up with the trimmers. With his hair being a little curly and wavy, I make sure to brush it over and over and over as many times as needed until when I comb it, it lays nice and straight. One thing I'm keeping in mind too is that the head rounds, off towards the corners. So it's important to angle your trimmer slightly upward when working towards these corners. That way when you look at the lineup from the front, it looks straight and natural. From the top view, it might obviously show a slight curve, but that's actually ideal. It keeps the lineup looking clean again without giving it that rainbow effect. This is something that I actually learned a while ago from my brother, the fourth Ken. Especially with lineups like these. You've got to be patient, keep combing the hair down over and over because a lot of people overlook the natural curves of the head. And that's how, they end up making their lineups look like rainbows. Mine used to look like that, I'm not gonna lie. But, it's just not it. But what I really appreciate though is, working with people who have strengths in areas I'm still improving in. I'll keep it real, I'm not the absolute best at lineups, but seeing others who are, it inspires me, and I'm always open to learning new little details like this, especially when it comes to different hair textures. It's dope being around barbers who push you to grow and help you see things from a different angle. But after this, to finish up the haircut, I just shaved everything underneath, only what was necessary. I'm careful to shave into the fade without applying too much pressure, creating heavy bald lines. Now as I move upward, I am flicking out gently. And if I do happen to create a small line, I'll just go back over it with my trimmer or clipper to clean it up. Other than that though, that's pretty much for the full haircut, guys. But I do want to quickly say that I really appreciate all the support. We're about to hit 100K and I'll be announcing a giveaway soon, probably in the next video or two. I'm really grateful for all the love and feedback you guys give me, so make sure to drop a comment down below. I read them all and I want us to keep growing together. Until next Wednesday, guys, peace.